Okay, you guys ready? All right, let's bow our heads and pray. All right, Lord Father, thank you for giving us this day to actually be together with you and actually help, worship in your name and to help give us some guidance when we actually look at some of these texts that you have and to open our minds to what you're actually trying to say to us. Give us the patience for all this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, so for some of you, I think so. You weren't here. Who wasn't here last week first? Okay, so just two of you guys. Okay, so what we talked about last time was like usually we always do like an intro as far as like what's going on in Genesis, right? And so we actually covered a couple of different like just vocab terms, looking at things, and so we'll kind of go through that again today. And so the main thing we actually wanted to talk about was when it comes to God, you always see the word God all the time, right? And you have a capital G, lowercase g, or even Lord, or Lord God, or Jehovah, God, and whatever it is as far as on that stuff. And so what we're trying to say on all that stuff was that every time you read the word God, that there's actually a different definition for it all the time. It's not always going to be that. Um, it's not always going to be where, like, if you say God, there's actually just one thing, right? A lot of times, it's like the word you're trying to look for is actually called Elohim, and what Elohim is, it's just kind of like a term for anything that's like a spiritual being, right? So it's the angels, it can be the cherubims and God Himself. It's pretty much anything that's a spiritual being that is not a physical form. That could be pretty much Elohim. So when you first start reading, as far as in the Bible, everything that says God in the very beginning, we cover to say that's actually the word is Elohim, which is just a term that says they're in like it's a circle of pretty much spiritual beings. And so later on we started covering, well, what is the actual name of God? And do you guys remember what that was? Okay. Yep. Yahweh. Okay. So we covered that one. So we said if the word was actually Lord, that was actually Yahweh, and if it said Lord God or Lord God, I'm pretty much on that one. It's pretty much it's Yahweh Elohim, which is pretty much Yahweh the spiritual being. Pretty much is what we're trying to say. And so now that was pretty much like the main thing we were covering, I think, in the first portions, and also what was actually the name of the spirit. All right, do you guys remember the name of the spirit? Ruach. Yeah, there you go. So we had those two terms, right? And so that's what we first started with to try to understand. And we did like a whole hour's worth of like pretty much of talking throughout this whole thing. So now we're gonna get into pretty much a little bit more. So we said that in Genesis, instead of actually trying to read chapter over chapter over chapter, because sometimes there's things that we can't really see and there's not like an interconnecting theme of every single chapter that holds it together, we said we're going to start reading these in pretty much movements, is what we call them. Kind of like watching a movie and there's different sections in the movie, right? Or even in a song. And so, and what we have is pretty much Genesis, we're going to split up to 4 different movements. And then, so now, since we talked about that, we're going to look into first starting reading into movement number 1, right? And so we said movement number 1 was, do you guys remember? Yeah, so Adam to Noah. Yes, there you go. Okay. And then we have pretty much part 1 that we're going to start looking into, right? And so part 1, do you guys remember what chapters they were? What's that? Yep, 1 through 5. Yep. Okay. So, and here we go. So, chapters 1 through 5. Now it's chaos to Eden to exile, right? And then story 2 is going to be the flood story. We'll get that afterwards. And then we're going to go ahead and get started on pretty much part 1, which is the chaos Eden to exile. So, Daisy sent out some pretty much some questions. Do you guys have those questions? You guys do? Oh, answers. Yes, Eric. Thank you. Correcting me. Do you guys have microphones? So Abraham and Eric, do you guys have microphones to pass out just in case? Oh, Perla has one. Cool. Thanks, Perla. Okay. So the first one, right, which is, and we won't get to every little person as far as to get, as far as the answers out there so we can kind of get this stuff going. So first question is, what attributes? Go ahead.
I have the sticks.
Oh, sticks. Oh, yeah. Love the sticks. You want the sticks?
Oh,
Okay, so like, the first person, Eric Martinez. What attributes of God can you identify in these chapters? Okay.
and what? Loving?
That's fine, yeah. Okay, so, yep. So you had that one on there, right? And then you want to get one more person just in case?
Yep.
Diana. Pearly, give her a mic. Oh, she has one? Okay.
Yeah, powerful and creative.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. So that's pretty much what we had on that one. Daisy, you have anything on that one? Or are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Okay. Second question: where in the text is Elohim mentioned, and what Elohim is it referring to? This is a really open question because when you read chapter 1, like what is it really saying? There's so much there. So let's just pick on one person. Gigi.
Is anybody, hold on, is anybody that cold? No? Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I put that it is mentioned everywhere and it is referring to God.
Which God? Because Elohim is just God. It's just the same term.
The creator God.
There's a lot of creator gods.
Yahweh.
Okay.
The Jewish God. Yeah. Yahweh.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Okay, so then we go see, and the next question is going to be, what was the pattern of Ruach, right? And do you see the story in creation as far as between chapter 1 in the Garden of Eden, 2 exile of Eden, and chapter 3? Yeah. Microphone.
Oh, based off of like Genesis.
Oh, you're saying like before you read or after?
He means, is there a right or wrong answer?
No.
I mean, if you identified it in like,
I think you're overcomplicating this one.
Yeah, very
If you know it, cool. If you don't, your best guess. After that, it's fine. No big deal. Yeah. Good. Okay. So, okay, so let's go. Who do you got? Bane.
We're on number 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you see a pattern of ruach? Let's just leave it at that.
Ruach.
There you go.
Complicated to like
look at.
understand what it was, but I mean, okay, Ruach was the spirit, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh,
Did you see it at all?
no,
You
I
did?
saw it, but I don't know if it
If
makes
not,
sense.
if not, what's her name? Edenia wants to help you.
Oh, you wanna help me? Come here.
They got one over there.
I know it's Spanish.
Okay.
El Espíritu de Dios se movía sobre las aguas. So
Okay.
you can see it there.
That okay. That was in
Okay.
chapter 1, and then chapter 2.
Where's the spirit in chapter 2? Oh, Daniel.
When I don't remember, I don't know if I'm right, but when they were exiled, didn't they hide from God's spirit?
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like that? Yeah.
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 Yep. Okay.
Good job.
Look at him go. Okay. All right.
I-
And then
that was actually number 3.
yeah, that was. There's still one in
That was-
between.
There's chapter 3. Sorry. So
Chapter 2?
Chapter 2 is the Garden of Eden when like
Yeah.
God
So they
created
started-
man.
Uh huh.
Yeah, that's the part that I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
is that considered spirit when
Yeah.
God, you know,
Yeah.
like sopló vida al
Mhm.
hombre?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So let's.
That was it was tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So.
It didn't mention spirit.
No, it
No.
doesn't. You kind of have to
Yeah.
like, and that's why I was saying like we have to when we read it, we have to like read it with like a little bit more of understanding and kind of slow down and read what we're saying so we
Yeah.
can see those things when we read it.
Especially. Yeah, and especially because like when we look at the terms as far as like what we call the spirit, like all those little things we said, yeah, it's a spirit, and we kind of understood what that was, but there's other things too, which is pretty much like if you see the wind, right? As far as like the trees are moving, that's wind, that's the spirit, right? The breath, that was part of the one of the terms for the word. So there's so many words that can go into ruach. It's not just like one thing, which is like spirit. You know what I mean? So that's okay. All right, next one. Daisy put this one down. Why is a garden so important? Pick a stick.
Oh, okay.
That's me? Oh, okay.
Unless you want, oh no, it's Chris without. Oh no, see, it's Chris with an H. It's Chris with an H.
Yeah, his is without an H.
I don't even know if yours is in here.
Yeah, it's right there. It says Christian.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for the next one. That's fine. So, yeah, from the beginning. So the garden to me, actually, what was actually important about it was this was actually the closest we've ever gotten to be with God as far as the purest thing that we ever had as far as with Yahweh, right? Later on, we see it with Moses, right, when he gets into the top of Mount Sinai. But this is actually like the pretty much the pinnacle as far as the beginning of getting as close as you can with God, right? So to me, why the garden is so important is that we actually had that relationship, like right there, like really together with Him, right? And so that's to me, that's why it was important.
Yeah. No, I think that was a good point because, like, I don't know if you guys noticed it. Yeah, like this is where the Bible starts, and then this is where God is dwelling with the humans, right? There, He's with them, and then sadly they do their mistake, and then they go out, and now they have to do everything on their own. And later on, the garden becomes something symbolic, or it gets used again in a different way. Not necessarily like the garden is recreated, but then you see it again where God and humans come together, or where he dwells with humans in one particular spot. But
Yep.
that's later.
Yeah. So the next one that we had, right? Next question was, can you identify in these scriptures God's plan for human salvation? So
Did anybody understand that question?
yeah, because I think sometimes like some of these, I told Daisy, I was like,
You
maybe we need to
understand it?
change it a little bit. The questions. You guys got it? All right, pick a stick.
Oh, that's me. Okay, so in thinking about like always Jesus, or what the whole book of the Bible is pretty much about how God wants to continue to save us, and how you see that in all these stories, like Abraham fails, Jacob fails, all these people fail, but God always wants to give and stretch out an opportunity to save the human race. And so when He exiles Adam and Eve at the very end, when He is saying, I don't know if I wrote it down here. Hold on.
Whoa. Went through all of them.
Oh, I didn't write it down. But pretty much whenever He's cursing the land, everybody knows that part, right? Let me find it real quick. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't.
You got it.
I'm looking for it. Okay, here we go.
She's right there. I can see
Yeah.
it.
Entonces Jehová, I'm going to read it in Spanish because I have it here. Entonces Jehová dijo a la mujer, es que es lo que has hecho, y dijo la mujer, la serpiente me engañó y comí. Y Jehová Dios dijo a la serpiente, por cuanto esto hiciste, so this is one of the things, right, that He cursed. Maldita será entre todas las bestias, maldita serás entre todas las bestias, y entre todos los animales del campo, sobre tu pecho andarás y polvo comerás todos los días de tu vida. And so this is chapter 3, verse 15. It says, y pondré enemistad en ti y la mujer, y entre tu simiente y la simiente suya. Este te herirá en la cabeza, y tú le herirás en la calcaña. Does anybody understand that?
Okay. Go ahead.
It's
Right
it's
there.
Chapter 3.
chapter 3, verse 15.
Right there, talking about Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah, when He's gonna like confront the snake, and then
Mm-hmm.
He steps on it, and then the snake bites his heel.
Right.
So yeah, Jesus confronts, and so that's what it's saying here. And then if we look at it in the New Testament, Jesus confronts him, and then that's what it says. Este te herirá en la cabeza. So Jesus will stomp on him, but then He will bite him. And what ends up happening in the story of Jesus? He dies. And then it goes,
Spoiler alert. So pretty much like, I guess in English, right, it says pretty much that because of what pretty much the serpent did, right? So the serpent went over and actually made Adam and Eve pretty much go and actually bite of the apple, right? And that was their choice. Okay. Yeah. That's why I was like, let me start from the beginning. Yeah. 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 They just like, bam.
yeah. Well,
No, he was at that point right there. He was talking to the serpent. Yes.
yeah. Yes.
No.
No,
Yeah.
because I started ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was the plan of salvation, that okay, yeah, this happened. Curse you, curse. He cursed the serpent, but at the same time he says, yes, I'm going to curse you, but someone's going to come and pretty much defeat you. But while
Right.
he's trying to defeat you, you're going to kill him.
Right.
But by killing him, he's
So Jesus, right? He allows himself to pretty much be killed by this, as far as like by the world, in order to actually save everybody.
humanity,
Yes,
and that's the
exactly
plan
right.
for salvation. So I don't know if
Mhm.
anybody ever noticed that when they were reading Genesis.
Yeah.
It's a good eye opener.
Okay, next question. 6. So this one you probably don't need to know. If you guys don't have this one, don't worry about it, but it's okay. So Ruach was given to humans and animals, right? So how are we different from animals? And if you don't know, we'll get to it eventually. Edenia had her hand up, so go ahead, Edenia. What'd you say? Pick a stick? Edenia's got it.
No, no, no.
Edenia in third
I
person.
have a theory.
Go
Okay.
for it.
Okay, so I think
Yep.
that we are different from animals because when animals die, they don't. It's not mentioned in the Bible that they go to heaven,
Mhm.
and we are able to go to heaven if we follow God's path.
Okay. Okay. We'll get there.
Mine's is simple. It just
We had a.
says Dios creó al ser humano a su imagen y lo creó a imagen de Dios, hombre y mujer los creó. It's
Okay.
basically saying like it's
Sure.
they created us.
Yeah, he never said nothing about animals.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Animals don't have a soul.
Okay. All right. So we'll
These are,
and
those
we'll
are
get
all.
to
Those
that.
are all
yeah.
good. Those are all good. Like good answers because it brings up a lot of conversation. So which is what we're going to talk
Yeah,
about.
and that's why it says it's not a right or wrong answer. That's why we're doing all this, so we can start to cover all of these things. Like I said, whatever it means to you, say that. You know what I mean? That way it makes it easier.
What were you say?
What?
I mean, even
Okay.
on Friday we were having this.
yeah.
We were having the same conversation with my dad, and
Yeah.
he had the thing. He had his points, and he was bringing up certain verses, and we were bringing up certain verses
Yep.
too, which then just spurred up a good
And
conversation.
that's what the Bible's supposed to do, is for you to actually have like what, because a lot of times, like I said before, everybody comes from a different background. So a lot of times the verses might mean something to you differently than somebody else will. And so when you start to gather it together and you start to say, well, this is what it means to me, you can start to kind of go back and forth and be like, why? And then when you pretty much do that, it starts to pretty much really maybe even have more concrete as far as why both people's as far as perspectives actually the same thing, and they actually just intertwine together to make a bigger and stronger argument. So, okay, so on to the next. So the first thing was the first part. So we had, what was the first part in part 1? It has 3 different words. It was, the first one was, no, that's the movement one. Chaos? That's what we got, chaos. Okay. So, and we're going to go ahead and pretty much talk about the chaos. And so why was there chaos? You guys remember watching or reading Genesis 1? You want to pick a stick?
Irenia wants to speak, guys.
First, before we start, is there
Okay.
anybody who had for chapter 1? Because I think we're going to start with chaos. Did anybody run
Mhm.
across anything interesting or anything that you, while you were reading, you found hard to understand and you had to do research?
Yeah.
Did-
Let's start with that.
I got something.
Okay. Adenia's got something.
Hold up.
Adenia's on a roll today, man. You got to watch
let
out.
me pull it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, in Genesis 1. Okay, and I think it's Genesis 1, verse 2,
Okay.
in Spanish.
Mhm.
Says, y la tierra estaba desordenada y vacía, y las tinieblas estaban sobre la faz del abismo, y el Espíritu Santo se movía sobre las aguas. So, my dad was like, he was talking to us the other day, and he was like, why would God create, like, God did not create the world when it was messy, because God wouldn't create something messy, you know?
Mhm.
So, like, between, when it says, y la tierra, that something happened between that period, and we don't know who did it or what caused it, but God did not create a messy world.
Okay. So you're pretty much saying on that one is like when he started the world, he already started with kind of like a good rough draft, not like it was complete like crazy disorder. Is what you're saying? Okay. I'm just asking. That's all. It's okay.
It's a good point. That's one thing that I had noticed too. It reads, I have to start reading. So, en el principio creó Dios los cielos y la tierra. That's one thing, right? And then what you were saying is, so it's if you look at the verse, it says y las. Well, one thing is, I never knew what abismo was. Does anybody know what abismo is?
Abismo is like you go down, like it's like basically like a little. No, it's like a.
It's deep in English. It's called deep in English.
Abismo for me is like basically like a. Yeah, un barranco.
I don't know what a barranco
What is that? That's like, is that Salvadorian?
Like the end of a hill or something, it just goes down.
Oh, okay. Like a cliff.
Yeah, like cliff.
A cliff. Okay.
Okay. You can go to the next slide.
Okay. So here's the next slide. So what does this represent right here? What's that? The what?
The ruach.
The ruach. And what is it doing? Hovering over the waters, right? And that's what it pretty much said in chapter 1. Okay.
So
All right.
if you look at the verse, it says, y la tierra estaba desordenada y vacía. Okay?
Mhm.
And then it says, it's a comma. And then it says, y las tinieblas estaban sobre la faz del abismo. So darkness, what does the English version say? Does anybody have the English version?
Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it. Going to anyways.
Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface. Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters.
Okay. So now the earth was, I already had it here. I don't know why I
Yeah.
didn't pull it up. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. El abismo, what it really means is chaotic waters or chaotic oceans. So the really cool thing about verse 2 is that it says, now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. So it's reckless, very unorganized, very everything. And then it says, comma. And then it says, and the Spirit of God. So now you have the Spirit, like it's there. And as it's going over it, it says, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And it's interesting how deep is chaotic ocean, but as soon as the Spirit goes over it, it becomes something more like what we call like neutral or
Yeah.
more like calm, and it's
Yeah.
now called waters. And then you see this in Jonah 2:5. I don't have it.
You guys remember Jonah 2? Anybody have Jonah 2:5 real quick?
I should have. I was getting to. Here we go.
Yep. You got your microphone? They got it. Whatever.
The engulfing waters threatened me, the deep surrounding me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head.
So in Spanish it says, me rodearon las aguas. So remember, he's already been thrown overboard, and he's in the waters. And the way that he's describing it is the same way that Genesis 1 is being described, very like just depressing, very chaotic, very like the worst, right? Me rodearon las aguas hasta el alma. El gran abismo me envolvió. So all that chaotic water was just around me. Las aguas se enredaron a mi cabeza. So that's what it means. Las algas, yeah. So that's what it means. That's what abismo means, and that's one thing. So yeah, and that your comment was like it was just unorganized, the way that it starts. And it's not until the Spirit of the Lord comes and it kind of like calms everything in a way, if you want to just like think about it like that.
Okay. So we're good then? Everybody understands that one? So pretty much Daisy's point was just trying to make earlier was, what's it called? That when whenever there's waters by itself, it's chaotic, it's crazy. But when the Spirit hovers over it, it's just calm waters now. It's pretty much the Spirit has that power. Pretty much what we're trying to say on that one. Okay, so next one, right? So Daisy has it pretty much categorized right here. I think one of the questions that she actually had was, how do you, what was it again, as far as your question, as far as between days 1 through 6?
Oh, how do you organize it?
Yeah, so whenever you guys look at this, you guys just see pretty much like day 1, like in order, and that's pretty much it, or how else do you guys see this?
Did anybody like kind of like look at it from a different perspective? And it's based off of that same verse. It says, if you look at it, y la tierra estaba, 1, desordenada, which means it's, what did I say? It was just, there's no
Chaotic.
organization to it. It's just, that's one. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 that the earth had was it was vacía. That means there's nobody in there, no inhabitants, no animals, no nothing. So those are two things. So based on those two problems, is there another way to view the days that God created the world, the way that God created the earth? Did anybody?
So
Huh?
okay, so I'll make it a little bit easier. So remember whenever like Daisy had like on her presentation for Daniel, and she had like the statue. What does the statue mean for every little empire? For pretty much when it came to even like whenever the beasts were up there, she showed like a chapter and then goes to here and it goes to here. What she's trying to say is like, do you any of you guys try to like reorganize the days to see if they have a same like set of information each time? So what?
Like as far as like how it's going, or like
Like, do you see?
pattern?
Yeah. Do you see any patterns within these days, or even like a correlation to say this one actually can match this one? And now I'm kind of giving it away. So.
No?
No.
Okay.
All right, that's fine.
Okay.
No.
I saw one pattern,
Okay.
and it was when when God was decía y Dios vio que era bueno, and it would say it after everything he did those days.
Okay.
So
So you're going pretty much to the on day 7, is what you're saying.
No, he said
No.
it on
On every single
days.
day.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay. So and it may make more sense whenever we start to kind of say because maybe I'm just being a little too vague on it. So, okay. So okay. So Daisy put it here, and the land is, and then we're gonna
And
go.
This is verse based off of
Yeah.
the same verse.
So this is on the left side is going to be pretty much Dave's going to have every little title for every pretty much like picture what it means and what are you trying to say over here, Days, on this one?
that there's no order.
Right.
There's no
So-
order in the land. And then so on day 1 from Genesis 1:3-5, everybody knows that God created he said, let there be light, right? And the thing that I noticed, and I don't know if you guys noticed, is that he didn't say, and let there be darkness.
Yeah.
There was already light. So
Already
already
darkness.
darkness. So
Mhm.
all he did is said, okay, let there be light. Okay, now that we have light and darkness, now we're going to organize it and say that the light is going to be day
Mhm.
and the night, or the darkness is going to be
Night.
night.
Does that make sense so far? So she's pretty much
So-
trying to say as far as show the difference between day and night, right? As far as what did he do on day 1.
So
Right.
now there's order between day and night.
Okay, so now the next one.
Okay.
So that's the skies, right?
And then in Genesis 1:6-8, it says, let's separate the waters from the waters. And anybody have any questions on that?
Okay, so let's say it this way, right? And maybe like because Daisy and I were talking about it, we're like, what does that even mean, right? So go ahead. Go ahead.
It like he separated the waters because the water was all over the place. Basically, it was unorganized.
Yeah, just
So you
chaotic,
just-
right?
Yeah, so he just split it. And
So like the way I was looking at it last time, right? It's like you had like this difference of what's going on, and maybe it's just me just being childish about it, I guess. Which like I was like, okay, maybe the easy thing to think about it is like when it rains, where's the water coming from? From the clouds, everything else. So you have like a cloud right there, but you also have like this sense of thing that's called gravity, right? Where you're pretty much trying to separate certain things. Whatever is actually has dense, pretty much goes down. Whatever pretty much is light, pretty much stays up. So it's kind of like that same thing, right? It's when you have like the sense of like the separation of gravity, the separation of what's called rain and clouds and everything else to kind of have, like I said, of the water being everywhere, there's tides, there's like tsunamis, whatever you want to call it, it's actually more calm. The water's all in like one area.
So I'm going to read.
That's how I saw it. And you guys can.
Yeah, I'll read. So if you look at verse 6, it says, let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from waters. So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault.
Mm-hmm.
So what is vault, right? And it'll tell you from the waters above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. So he said, let there be a sky and separate the waters above the sky and then the ones below the sky.
Make sense now?
Does that make sense?
Is that a little bit easier? Okay. All right. So let's go to the next one, right? So we have day 3. And what happened in day 3?
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Day 1 and day 2, the skies, is that right?
No, day 1 is going to be night and day.
I'm asking for the
Oh.
side.
Oh, on you have on the
yeah.
left side you have skies, skies.
Or did you?
No, yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
So there was 2 days of skies.
Yeah, because now he placed. Okay, how do we say this?
You could just say day.
I
the
mean,
day.
those are things that are happening in the sky.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
So day 3, what happened? The land. Okay. You have
Oh.
anything- this one?
Um, does anybody have anything to say or found anything hard on this one? Because
Go
I
for
have.
it. You got
Also,
anything, Chris?
also just while Vanessa's looking for that, I just found I didn't get to read it all, but the number day 2 is when
Mhm.
he created the firmamento or expansión. Yeah, expansión of firmamento. I still need to like look it up a little bit more what firmamento, what it all encompasses, but this is where it would el firmamento would have been created.
Okay. So we're good so far? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we're waiting for Vanessa.
Vanessa, you good? Are you still going? No rush.
Anybody else?
Okay. So this brings up to pretty much what I was trying to say earlier, which
hold
was
on. On day 3.
day 3. Go ahead.
Yeah. Day 3. Yeah. So now he's producing the plants.
Mhm.
The land produce. Let the land produce vegetation. Interesting. I don't know if you guys saw this. He didn't give his. It doesn't say that he like made the land. He said he didn't say he didn't create vegetation. He said let the land produce vegetation.
It's kind of like he's commanding the land to do something, right? So it's not like he himself was
Here's
doing
the trees. Yeah.
Because kind of like where's the trees going to come from? All the roots, everything else is going to come from the
So,
land.
Yeah. So
from the
he's like you
soil.
said, he's
Yeah.
giving order to the land to
Exactly
produce
right. Yep. Okay. Good on day 3.
it. Mm-hmm.
All
So
right.
so now that we have these organizations, how are we going to inhabit in? How are we going to put things in here?
She's trying to say, is there an order to it, right? So we're going to do it right now. So see Daisy's little creative things, right? She always does these little arrows, right, on everything. And then you have day 4. And this is what I was trying to say earlier. Is like, how do these actually come together as far as, is there similarities to pretty much day 1 and day 4? And that's what Daisy's trying to talk about.
Yeah. So on day 4, it covered. Day 1 it covered the organization of day and night,
Mhm.
and then day 4 he's inhabiting it, or he's placing something in that space, and by doing so he's creating the stars, the sun, and the moon.
Mhm.
Is
It's good?
that making sense now? What I'm doing or what it's covering? Okay.
Okay. So let's go to the next one, right? So what's happening in day 5?
It's when he puts creatures
Uh-huh.
in the water and
Yeah.
he puts creatures in the sky.
Yeah.
So it also connects to the sky.
So that's what you can see pretty much like the pictures that pretty much Daisy's trying to represent here, right? And you can see all the verses too on those ones. So
He was like
Animals
the
in
water.
the water,
Yep.
animals in the sky, water on earth,
Sep-
and then water in the sky.
Yep. Make sense so far? Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. So what happened in day 6?
Humans
And
ate and then
In the land. Yep. So there you go. So you have pretty much humans and animals in the land, and you can see now each thing pretty much correlates to where it's supposed to belong to, right?
it's answering or solving the problem that was there from Genesis 1:2.
Right. It's
That
kind
the
of
land
like
it had no order and it had
Yeah.
no inhabitants.
yeah, because like you couldn't put the animals or the birds there because first you had to do something beforehand. You couldn't put the people and as far as animals on the land either, and you also couldn't do the stars and the sun first. Like those are all the steps you have to do first before you actually get to the final level, right? As far as what you're trying to do. So now, does anybody else have any questions before we move on?
Also,
We'll send you guys the PowerPoints.
so it's okay. They can write. If
Did you want to take a picture? She said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, don't worry.
'Kay.
Okay, so this is pretty much all chapter 1, right? That's what we're covering. So all chapter 1 is pretty much what's going on here. There's also extra things, but we'll get to it in a minute, right? As far as what we're trying to say on that stuff. So now, go ahead. Good.
No.
I'm gonna cover this other stuff later on.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
I think it's day 6.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Entonces dijo Dios, hagamos al hombre a nuestra imagen, conforme a nuestra semejanza, y señoree en los peces del mar, en las aves del cielo. Well, whatever. The first sentence, he says, hagamos el hombre a nuestra imagen. And like,
Mhm.
he's not going to be talking to himself. So people assume that God was the first one, but he's talking to Jesus and the Spirit.
Right, because it's
Yeah.
Elohim, right? So
Yeah.
so like Daisy said last time, Elohim can be singular or plural, right? So it's kind of like right there. It says us, like and then it's gonna have the imagine. What it said right there. Let us make mankind in our image, right? And that's what pretty much like when you have this us, it's like well that's in the plural tense. So it's kind of trying to say what's going on. So like I said, I'm gonna cover this stuff in a bit when you start to see what's going on that stuff, so you kind of see what we're gonna go on. So, all right. So the next one. Here you go. Pretty pictures. Okay, so now we're in pretty much chapter 2, right? And we're talking about the Eden and Adam. That's right, Eden, Adam and Eve pretty much story, right? Is what's going on. Obviously, Eve isn't mentioned in here until pretty much chapter 3 when Adam gives, him or give her his the name, right? So,
Wait, I'm not done.
go ahead.
The last day was day 7, and
Oh yeah, go ahead.
and it, yeah, and that's what I was gonna go to. I always thought about it as, oh, he took a break, but looking at what it mean, like what more could that mean? I don't have my notes fully typed up, but it pretty much means like that. He said that on day 7 it was completed. So it's not like he took a break or rested. Rested how we think of it, like just
Kind of like yeah.
relaxed. Yeah, it just meant that on on the 7th day he completed all his work.
Yeah, it's like if you were working on something and you finally finish your project and you're kind of like, cool, like I got to see all that work. And it's not like you're resting; you're still enjoying what you have created, and that's kind of what I think. That's how I interpret it. It's pretty much like how you're just gonna kind of like not sit back, but you're kind of like, that's so much work. Let me look at this and kind of enjoy, what's kind of happening. That's how I took it.
That's
Yeah. Okay. So now we're gonna get to pretty much back to the story over here on Eden. So what is this picture of right here? Adam. Okay. And what's happening? He's sleep. Okay, so he's on the ground, right? And so, okay, so let's go for that first, right? So how was Adam created? From dirt, right? And that's from the ground, right? Okay. And so right now we can say pretty much he's a physical being, right? But nothing is. It's pretty much he's not alive, right? Until what happens? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that gets to my next thing, right? So you guys started talking about soul earlier, right? And you guys are saying, oh, there's no soul. That's what the difference is between animals and humans and everything else, right? And so let's first try to define like what is soul. So what is you guys' definition of soul? That's fine, Daniel. Go ahead.
For me, soul is like not our physical body and life. It's like our inner spirit, like our spirit. Like when we die, all we have left is our spirit. Like
Okay.
not physically, we're not gonna have flesh or anything, just our spirit.
Okay, so let's go with that. So it's pretty much that's the normal definition of like soul for English definition, right? That's what it really means, right? So let's go into that. So the definition of soul, right? It's spiritual or an impartial, pretty much immaterial part of a human being or animal, and is regarded as immortal. So a lot of times when people think about soul, as far as it's a normal, right, what the word means, they always think of it as like, well, I have a soul, it went into my body, and then when I die, that soul becomes immortal, right? And that's what pretty much keeps me pretty much going all the time, right? That's how people usually see it. They see it as kind of like it's something that doesn't stay with your body; it goes away from your body, and that soul is like immortal. It's trapped in your body until you pretty much you die. That's what people think of it as, right? Let's go to like another definition, right? So another definition they're saying it's an emotional, intellectual energy or intense, especially as revealed in a work of art or an artistic performance. So they think of it as kind of like when you look at something that says that thing has soul because it has like this weird energy for it, right? That says, that's coming out and actually looking right at you, supposedly, right? But that's not the actual definition of soul in Hebrew. That's not pretty much how it's supposed to work. So in Hebrew, right, the definition of soul is actually nephesh, right? So nephesh what that actually is, and it's kind of like we looked at earlier, right? When we looked at ruach, right, or Yahweh, whatever it can be. Yahweh is just one thing. That's all it means. But for ruach, there's multiple different words that you can use in English, pretty much vocab, that can mean ruach. Same thing with nefesh. So nefesh, it can mean your throat, and there's a pretty much a verse in it, what's called a Deuteronomy 6:4 and 5 up there. It pretty much talks about it, and I'll get to it in a minute. It also can mean appetite, as far as like what's actually like going to be swallowed in your throat, or pretty much what you eat. It can mean your neck. So we kind of see right now we're talking about three different things, and it all relates to pretty much this part right here, right? Or it can also be your physical being, as far as just your flesh, right? And so we'll get there in a minute, right? So maybe it'll start to make sense a little bit. And so this word is used at least 700 times in the Bible. So it's pretty important. They use it over and over and over again. We need to understand what that actually means, as far as what does nefesh mean. So I'll get to the next one. So before I start on this one, anybody have any questions so far? Okay, so we'll keep going. Okay, so here's nefesh, right? So in Deuteronomy 6:4 and 5, right, it says, "We remember the fish which we did not eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leek and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul," right, "is dried away." And what do they mean by soul right here? How can your soul be dried away when you're saying it's spiritual and you're talking about pretty much food and like liquids and everything else? Yeah, go for it. Appetite. Yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty much, that can be the appetite, where it pretty much says, you know, like I pretty much, I want to eat something, right? I want to eat some certain things like that. But it's saying soul. So that doesn't, you know what I mean? Like when you think about soul in English, it's not the same definition. So that's why we're trying to do this. So next one. So we have Numbers 11:5-6. So it says, "We remember the fish that we ate in Egypt at no cost. Also the cucumbers, melons, and leeks." Sorry, I copied and pasted the wrong thing. But yeah, that's the wrong one. But it's okay. I'll get to the next one. Okay, so Psalms 105:18. Right, so it says, they bruised his feet with shackles, and his neck, nefesh, was put in irons. And this is talking about pretty much whenever it was, I think I had it right here. I have my notes on me over there. Anyways, what it's pretty much trying to say is that like they're talking about his neck, but even in like the King James version, everything else, they say soul, and that's nefesh. And so, does that make sense so far? As we're saying soul, but that's what they're talking about right now is pretty much just their throat. That's what we're talking about at first. So how does nefesh relate to people? As far as when we talk about pretty much souls, as far as for a person, you're saying it's a spiritual thing. How does that relate to us? Yeah, nefesh. So Genesis 46:15, it says, "These are the sons of Leah, which bear unto Jacob," right, as far as in that city, right? Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. No worries. "With his daughters, and then the soul, and all the souls, nefesh, of his sons and his daughters with 30 and 3." And pretty much trying to say that he's referring to all of his kids as souls. As far as I have all these, yeah, exactly, people. So it's pretty much saying these all are my pretty much kids. They're physical beings, right? So it's trying to say it's not so much as, hey, they have spirit, but it's saying they're physical, they're flesh, right? And so that's what we're trying to get to on that one. Is pretty much now the question is, so people don't have a nefesh. They don't have a soul, a spiritual thing that is inside you. When you die, it leaves and goes somewhere else, right? And it's encapsulated, and you're like, let's say you're a robot that has a soul inside of you. When you die, that's it, right? No. What it actually means is that you are the living, breathing, physical thing. You are a soul. The physical thing that you are, that's a soul. Does that make sense? So when we go back and look at soul, like, so when we talk about what happened with Adam, right? So did he have something before he became alive? Or did he become alive? Or did he become alive when God breathed into him, and now he is a soul? He's a physical being. He's alive, and that's what we're talking about. And so there's other aspects as far as when it comes to soul. So like, say, for instance, the way that they use it a lot of times, they say if somebody kidnaps somebody else, that person is pretty much a soul, a person that pretty much kidnaps, right? They can refer to it that way in Hebrew. Or if somebody kills somebody, they can pretty much say is a nefesh killer, That's pretty much they're just using it as a physical being, as a physical person. That's all it is, right? So the way you define soul is different now. It's not the same as far as what used to be, where you're encapsulated into this body, and once you die, that soul goes somewhere else.
So basically, you could say Adam was like a lifeless soul in English.
Yeah.
So, like, remember on when we were reading, what I had found interesting was the whole thing how they were created in verse chapter 1. Well, actually, remember that it said like the land produced. This is what I saw. Land produced the vegetation, right? And so it's like all this
Mhm.
plants. But he also said. Luego dijo Dios, produzca la tierra seres vivientes. So from the ground, he created the creatures, like the animals.
Mm-hmm.
And in that same way, he created man. He created him from the ground.
From the ground. Yep.
So now you have like this, what would you call like a Play-Doh type with a mud, or a mud, like a,
Yeah.
just
yeah.
a figure of a person with no life.
It's pretty much like they always say, it's like an idol, right? It's a statue, no life in it, right? That's how you can look at Adam at the time frame. Is he's lifeless. He's and you could say he is nefesh because he is a pretty much a person, but he's a dead nefesh at the time frame. He's not alive. So that's where it kind of gets to the next part, what Daisy's trying to say right now, which is, now what does it set apart, right? So the question is, let me know if you want to stop.
Yeah, go to the next one and then stop.
Okay. So what sets humans apart from animals? And so this is where I kind of skipped a little bit of chapter 1, was to kind of figure out what sets us apart, in which I think a lot of you guys said, because we have a soul, but now we can see nefesh. Yeah, we're all the same.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
that's what I told you to stop.
My
Give me a
bad.
second.
My bad. My bad.
So Daniel brought up a good thing. He's like, or I think somebody did. Daniel brought up a good point. He said, "Oh, but they have no soul, or they have no."
Right.
So now that you know what a soul is, it's a living,
No, you're just a physical being.
it's a physical being
Yep.
or a physical creature.
Yep.
Let me read you a Psalms. It says, should I read it in English or Spanish?
It's up to you.
I'll read it English or Spanish. Okay.
Know your audience.
Okay. So here it goes. It's Psalms 104:27. And said, Todos ellos, and he's talking about the creatures, animals. Todos ellos esperan en ti, para que les des su comida a su tiempo. Tú les das, ellos recogen. Abres tu mano, se sacian de bienes. Escondes tu rostro, se turban. So if he's hiding away from them, they're getting scared because now his presence isn't with them. That's why they're scared. Les quitas el aliento, expiran y vuelven al polvo. Envías tu espíritu, son creados y renuevan la faz de la tierra. Does that make sense, or do you want me to read in English?
I could just translate English real quick.
Okay,
So
I got it.
Daisy's got it.
Okay, in English it
Sorry,
might sound
I get excited.
Okay, all creatures look at you to give them their food at the proper time. When you give it to them, they gather it up. When you open up your hand, they are satisfied with good things. When you hide your face, they are terrified. When you take away their breath, they die and return to the dust. When you send your spirit, they are created, and you renew the face of the ground. So you see how verse 30 says, when you send your spirit, when you send your ruach,
Mhm.
when you send your ruach, you create them. But when you take away their breath, which is their ruach too, they go back to the dust. Just like how how we as humans go back to the dust. And you guys know that verse where it says, "De polvo naciste, de polvo volverás," right?
Yeah.
So now to your comment that they don't have. No, I know
No,
you
you're
didn't.
good.
No,
You're
but
good.
like.
So yeah, pretty much. So now the question is, what sets us apart?
So if we
if,
all
if,
have.
if Daisy just read the thing that says that pretty much humans and animals both, when they die, the same thing happens to them. So what's that difference then now?
I stand by my point.
Which was yours?
Mine was that we go to heaven, and in the Bible
Okay.
doesn't mention that animals do.
Okay.
This one's okay. So to answer your question, I don't even know, but it says Ecclesiastes 3:18 says, I'll read it in English. I also said to myself, as for humans, God tested them so that they may see that they are like the animals. Surely the fate of human beings is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. Everything is meaningless. All go to the same place, all come from the dust, and to dust all return. Who knows if the human spirit rises upward, and if the spirit of the animal goes down into the earth. So I saw that there is nothing better for a person than to enjoy the work, because that is their lot. For who can bring them to see what will happen after them?
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So he's just saying, like, it's the same thing. We have the same thing.
Yeah.
We all have this breath. We all have this thing that God gave us. We're all going to die. Everything is meaningless. Like, we can't say that we're
Different than animals.
different than or created differently
Yep.
than the animals.
So
Same.
animals
Yeah.
go to heaven.
Yeah. So we'll get there. Okay, so now
Do animals go to heaven?
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Oh, okay. My bad. I didn't hear you.
Okay, so in Genesis 1, 26, 28, which is what you guys were talking about earlier, right? This is what pretty much happens, right? So it says, then Elohim, right? Because I changed God and I put Elohim just to make it easier for all of us. Sorry, guys. Yeah, good. So then Elohim said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the seas and the birds of the skies and over the livestock and the wild animals and all over the creatures that move along the ground. So the way I see this, right? So Elohim says, right? And so what Edenia was saying earlier, she's pretty much saying that's the Trinity, or whatever the case may be, what you want to call it. It says, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, right? So what happened in the beginning, as far as you look at all those pictures in the very beginning in chapter 1, what happened? He created all those things. And what does that come with? So, like, and I guess what I mean by that is that, like, what is God in charge of? Of everything, right? As far as the earth, the skies, everything, right? So if he says, let us make mankind in our image, what is his image? What is Elohim's image? What is it responsible for? Everything, right? So if he's making us in his image, what does that say for us then? We're responsible for this world, right? But what does that responsibility mean? Are we in charge of, like, any little thing? So you say animals. That's a good point. Okay, so let's keep going to the next one, right? So 27. So I have, like, in certain colors is pretty much the correlation as far as together, right? So it says, so Elohim created mankind in his own image. We saw it again. The image of Elohim, he created them, male and female, he created them, right? So let's go to the next one. So verse 28 of chapter 1. Rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. So made to rule. That's
So
right.
if you go back, so it's not necessarily like creation that makes us different, but it's the commands that he gives
Exactly
us.
right.
So if you go back to Genesis 1:26, he says, I think you have it.
Yeah,
up
it's right there. Yep.
Yeah. No, sorry.
24?
20. It says,
Okay.
so he creates the living creatures and the birds, and he blessed them, and then he said, and he ordered them, if you want to say, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the water in the seas.
Yep.
Let the birds increase on the earth. That's all he told them to do.
Yep.
If you go to when the land produces the creatures, he says, no, that's it.
Yeah, so what Daisy's trying to say on that one, right, is that
And in comparison to that one where it says, in comparison to 28, it says he blessed the humans and he said, be fruitful, which is the same thing as the creatures, the birds and the sea creatures. Be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, which is exactly the same. But then he says, rule over the fish, the birds in the sky, and every living creature that moves on the ground.
Do you guys see the difference as far as what we're trying to say on that one? So he tells the fish and the animals, everything else, he tells them, just multiply. That's the only command I give you guys. Just multiply and be fruitful on this land. But for us, he tells us, you need to rule over them. You need to rule as far as like to be in charge of them, to have the order. Because what we're trying to say is like, where does the order come from, right? So the birds and animals are pretty much like tier 1 or whatever you want to call it, tier 3. Now we're on the next level, right? We're above them, but who's above us? Right. So Elohim, Yahweh, everything else that's on there, right? So, and that's what we're trying to say, right? Is that to me the way I interpreted this one, right, is that we're here not. There's not a difference between soul. The difference is that we're made in His image to rule, to govern. Make sense? Okay. All right. On to the next one. Daisy, you have anything before I move over?
No, I think we should have. It's a good stopping point.
Let me see. I think I have something else.
No, you don't.
Oh, it stops? Oh, is it 10?
It's 8:46.
Wow. Dang. It's getting excited.
So is that making sense? How like you is not the more that we're like read. It's not necessarily just reading it, but more like really like looking at it
Into the
word for word,
details. Yeah.
and see the relations, because that's what the Bible really is all about. It's about like the cohesiveness.
Yeah.
So do animals go to heaven?
I mean, why would you save the animals in Noah and the ark?
So they can multiply.
Okay.
I mean that's what they're. I mean all of it is God's creation at the end of the day.
So Daisy's thing, as far as she said earlier, right? The difference between animals, we're going to talk about later on in chapter 3, between animals and humans, we had a choice to do something, and we messed up that choice. No, they're different.
They're smarter.
They weren't tested like we were. Okay? If that answers your question for now.
That's why I said, as for humans, God tested them so that they may see that they're like the animal, which the animal has no reason, no thoughts. Because God didn't tell them to rule.
And we'll get that. Chapter 3. We'll get there. So, for now, done. Yep. See you guys later.